Imagine saving the majority of your life in order to buy a home, just to be denied. Not because of your income, but due to the color of your skin. For decades, racially restrictive covenants have been put in place to prohibit people of color from living in specific neighborhoods. How did racially restrictive covenants become illegal, and what legal battles paved the way for a more equal housing market? What is a racially restrictive covenant? Racially restrictive covenants are clauses written into deeds that specifically prohibit people of a certain race from living in that home. These covenants were seen in nearly every U.S. city in the 20th century and were problems sought to be solved during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Firstly, let's look at a Supreme Court case that upheld racially restrictive covenants.
In 1921, Irene Corrigan sold her land to a black couple despite her neighborhood having an agreement that no neighbor would sell or lease their property to a black person. Buckley, a resident of the neighborhood, took Corrigan to court based on an infringement of the agreement. The case made its way to the Supreme Court, and in 1926, the Supreme Court decided that these covenants did not violate the 14th Amendment because the amendment only applied to government action, not private agreements. This decision set the precedent that racially restrictive covenants were legal, thus continuing their implementation. 2 decades later, the African-American Shelley family bought a home in St. Louis, Missouri, which belonged to a neighborhood with a restrictive covenant. An occupant of the neighborhood, Louis Kramer, filed suit against the Shelleys to prevent them from moving in. And so, Shelley v. Kramer brought the issue of racially restrictive covenants back to the Supreme Court. This time, the court ruled that while private individuals may abide by covenants, the government could not enforce them. This was a landmark decision, yet also controversial, as it did not completely end housing discrimination, and it gave private entities free rein to create racially restrictive covenants.
Later, in 1968, Jones filed suit for being denied housing by Alfred H. Meyer Co. on account of him being African American. In Jones v. Alfred H. Meyer Co., the Supreme Court ruled that Congress had the power under the 13th Amendment to ban racial discrimination in private housing transactions. This decision paved the way for one of the most significant housing laws in U.S. history. Just months after Jones v. Meyer, on April 11, 1968, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act as part of the larger Civil Rights Act of 1968. This law made it illegal to discriminate in housing based on race, but also other factors, such as religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin, therefore giving individuals the right to sue for housing discrimination. This act became a pillar of civil rights movement by officially making racially restrictive covenants illegal. In Michigan, the issue of racially restrictive covenants was incredibly prominent in places such as Detroit and Flint. Before the Fair Housing Act, 4 black investors took matters into their own hands. They established Auburn Hills, a neighborhood in Grand Rapids created to provide housing opportunities for black families in the face of discriminatory covenants and redlining. 3 years of hardship and struggle with the city, they made the safe haven that is Auburn Hills. Today, Auburn Hills stands as a testament of resilience and the ongoing fight for equal housing rights. Challenges still persist, but collective action and civic engagement has set the stage towards progress, leading to a fairer, more inclusive society.